Prepare yourself for a mind-melting, truth-revealing, reality-shattering episode of the Outlaw Crypto Podcast. Because for episode 6, we are unleashing the unstoppable force of freedom herself, Csilla Brimer. A privacy tech advocate, a Monero warrior, and a blockchain battle strategist, Csilla is at the front lines of the digital revolution, striking terror into the hearts of the surveillance technocrats and their twisted AI overlords who seek to chain humanity in their all-seeing matrix. This isn't just any guest, my friends. No! Csilla is the heroic guardian of personal liberty, fighting with everything she's got to keep your data out of the prying hands of the invisible puppet masters who think they can track, monitor, and control every aspect of your digital life. From the depths of Bitcoin communities in San Francisco to the lightning developer Bitcoin and crypto communities of Denver and Colorado Springs, Csilla is organizing the cypherpunk revolution, arming freedom fighters with the tools they need to take back control from the corporate giants who would sell your very soul to the highest bidder. You think privacy is a luxury? Wrong! It's a human right, and Csilla Brimer is here to remind the world that without it, we are nothing but prisoners in the digital panopticon, where every click, every keystroke, every transaction is just another link in the chains of surveillance capitalism. With her deep knowledge of Monero, the untraceable, uncensorable currency of the people, Csilla is dismantling the surveillance industrial complex brick by brick, coin by coin. Her expertise doesn't stop at privacy coins. Csilla is a visionary, leading the charge in blockchain gamification, game economics, and predictive modeling that could be the very blueprints for liberation. She's creating proof of concept designs that turn apps into weapons of resistance against the creeping tentacles of the technocratic beast. And her mentorship is breeding a new generation of digital rebels ready to take up the cause of personal sovereignty. In this episode, we'll dive deep into how Monero and privacy tech are the last bastion of freedom in a world where every digital action is tracked, traced, and monetized by the AI overlords. In the most recent attack on privacy tech, we'll discuss the persecution of privacy tool software developers by the demonic overlords of the gangster computer god. Csilla Brimer is here to expose the truth, to tear down the curtain, and to show us the path to liberty in a digital landscape littered with the broken dreams of privacy sold out by the traitorous hands of corporate shills. Don't miss episode 6 of season 2 of the Outlaw Crypto Podcast, because once you hear Chilla's battle cry, you'll know that the fight for digital freedom has only just begun.
We're back with another episode of the Outlaw Crypto Podcast. I'm your host, Paranoia Machinery, and this is a Podcasting 2.0 podcast, which means that you can stream sats, you can boost sats through the Fountain app or any other Podcasting 2.0 app, and you can also donate via XMR chat or privacy coins. We accept Monero, Wownero, and a couple other privacy coins because we're a privacy-first podcast. Tonight, my guest is Csilla Brimer, who is the co-founder of Willenrimer, which is a crypto consultancy firm. She's joined me. I want to put it out here for the audience that we actually did a whole podcast and I lost it. I had a problem with the hard drive and I lost 4 interviews. So in the next week or two, I'm going to be recording those interviews again. Csilla was kind enough to join me and be the first of those re-recorded interviews. Csilla, how are you tonight? Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm good. Thank you.
So today, before we started recording, me and you were talking about some juicy gossip. There's been a lot of stuff happening in the crypto space, the privacy space. One of those was that Monero Boats is down. Monero Boats is a website that gives like the street price of Monero and like provides traders with the opportunity to arbitrage from like centralized exchanges to decentralized exchanges via the street price indicator that comes from BISC, Havino, and I'm not even sure, maybe a couple other decentralized exchanges. But apparently it's down. It's been attacked. There are rumors that Havino is next. What do you think about this, Chill?
Well, Havino DEX as well as Serai DEX was bound to be investigated at some point. Like when they went after the exchanges, um, we sort of knew that these are the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to, because they consider it money service business. And since it has no license, they're going to witch hunt someone and hold someone accountable. And I mean, as you know, right now, although technically code is free speech, um, in reality, we are at the forefront of this war against privacy tools. We have several open source developers in prison for not even doing anything, for conspiracy for money laundering. So basically, that, in my mind, that's almost a bogus charge. Like you thought about money laundering, so therefore you're guilty. So
I would
it's
agree.
it's a it's a very sad situation, because I don't think it's gonna change, regardless of the election results or how pro Bitcoin we're gonna go. I don't think this matter is going to change. And I was thinking about that today, of how angry I'm with myself, because here we are, all of us, sitting and messing around with our coins and our meme coins and all this stuff, right? And there's not enough millennial participation in Congress. There's not enough people who are fighting for these open source tools, privacy, developers. Like, who is? No one. And the last time, I hate to get involved in things like this, but the last time I did, we actually had a successful pro blockchain legislation in Colorado. And the truth is, like, all it requires is work and lobbying and talking to people and just basically pushing for change. And
Mhm.
I don't feel like we are doing our best. I think we have a lot of complaints about what is not being done, but like, what are we doing specifically to change this?
Well, I can see how it does seem kind of like a negative situation, but I'm actually a little bit positive about the situation because, like, I know everything that you're saying is true. It seems like it's very oppressive. We're witnessing like a full-on assault on free speech, on people writing applications and then being blamed for what their users are doing with the open source software that they put out there. So we're in dire straits. I agree, but we just saw the Assange DAO free Julian Assange. Like somebody used a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization, to mobilize like a big community of people that were idealistically aligned in order to free one of the most high profile political prisoners of the last, like, I don't know, 20 years from his incarceration using crypto as a tool, using this DAO as a tool. And there's like anonymous DeFi is coming. Like there's already like Beam, ZANO's introducing like private tokenization. Firo is going to have anonymous DeFi. DarkFi is coming. There's tools that are in the works that I believe are really going to level the playing field and allow for more of this kind of thing, to where people are going to be able to use DAOs and like decentralized applications and stuff to realize political objectives. So I don't think it's as bleak as we think it is, even though like they're locking people up for writing applications and stuff. I think developers that are idealistic and need to, or want to contribute to like projects like this, like privacy tools and stuff, need to possibly go dark and not, put themselves out there, like put their full names out there and be public. They need to maybe
I
start
agree.
developing over Tor and Codeberg and stuff like the DarkFi team is doing. How do you see it?
Well, I'm glad you're positive. It's like, I don't know how to feel about it. I just think that we are really at the forefront, and not many people even understand the need for privacy, much less what's going on. Like, why is samurai wallet developer arrested. That's just so, for the mainstream, it's not really an issue, and it may take years. And long term, I'm positive as well, because whatever makes sense prevails eventually. But what if it's going to take 15 years? What if they're going to have to spend 15 years in prison? What if they're going to get shut down? What if Haveno, Dex, and Darkfine, all these platforms get shut down before we can start using it because the developer is in prison?
Yeah, that is a very big risk. I mean, the Tornado Cash guys have shown that you're not safe if you benefit. Like, their smart contract gave them like a little bit of the fees from the platform, right? So they apparently were money launderers because they were gaining financially from offering a DApp, which I don't agree with at all. But I'm not, law enforcement. But
that was a witch hunt too. I listened to like the questioning, and I think it was biased from the beginning. Like, they would ask things like, why did you decide to make this open source? Why not closed source? Why not KYC? Why not? So from that questioning, you can see that they were already looking for guilt.
Yeah, a reason to prosecute them. So, I mean, I have faith that maybe they could win, because the PGP wars and all that stuff that took place in the 90s with like the original cypherpunks, like, they prevailed because code is speech, right? That's like a legal precedent that's set in stone. And I think even the oppressive like regimes that are trying to prosecute these developers know themselves, like, if they outlaw code from being speech, if they like overturn that precedent, like, that has like impacts that are far more wide ranging than crypto itself, like, or privacy tools. Like, that would affect like every industry, every kind of software for every industry. Like, it would be a huge like change of how courts like deal with like, disputes and stuff over code and all that kind of thing. Like, what do you think about that? Like, do you think that they're willing to selectively enforce and like change that precedent just so they can persecute who they want to, and then just leave everybody else alone and only go after like who they deem a threat?
Yeah, I don't think so. From my observation, I don't think that these government officials have like 15, 20-year plans. They're just sort of reacting and making decisions, and not everything is carefully considered. I wish it was, but that's just not the case. They're reacting to things oftentimes, and they're trying to show enforcement when there's some pressure. And so these are like, I guess, because of the widespread view, thanks to Lizzie and people like that, that crypto is used for criminals. They just want to show like, okay, yeah, we are handling this, and they want to make an example out of the early innovators. So I don't know. I mean, it's a situation where if you are an open source developer, I strongly recommend that you do this anonymously,
Yeah,
or
I would
be
agree.
willing to go to prison, because that's in the cards. And it's back to what you said about the Assange situation. Yes, I mean, obviously, thankfully, he's free now, but the personal sacrifice he made, no one is going to refund that to him. Like, he
He
lost.
almost died from that too.
Yeah,
Like, his
yeah.
health went like totally bad. Like, he was a healthy man, and like his health like really started becoming an issue. So, I mean, I don't know. Like, the samurai guys, from what I understand, were like idealistically like ready to go down with the ship for their beliefs and their principles. I hope they're, not made an example of, like Ross Ulbricht, who is still in prison right now for making a website. Like, I hope that doesn't happen to him. Like, hopefully they're protected by code being speech, and the fact that like the users, they can't have any power over how the users themselves use the application. But who knows?
That's a good segue to Telegram, because again,
Yeah,
this is free speech. Oh yeah, maybe not.
them going after Telegram's a big deal, because that's like, I mean, Pavel Durov is like on par with like Zuckerberg or somebody. Like, You know what I mean? Like, wasn't he like heavily involved with like VK?
So I never used, not never. I used Telegram early on,
Okay.
but it was I considered it to be a very messy platform. Like I had like ex-classmate who just like it popped up like your ex-classmate just joined, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to someone like just because I have their phone number. And so I thought it was really messy, especially if you like your privacy, and like that's the point of these privacy applications, um, to not just have random people pop up to talk to you. So I didn't like it. And then obviously it wasn't encrypted. And there were a lot of scammers already back then on the platform. So I considered it very bots, scammers. It was just too messy for me. Now I don't know how it evolved, and maybe these last few years it became better, but I know there were a lot of shady people on Telegram. And a lot of people consider this a huge, I mean, we have to keep an eye on it because it's definitely a free speech issue,
Mhm.
but I would argue that it wasn't really a privacy platform per se, because the biggest mistake that he made was not making it end to end encrypted.
By
And that
default.
just shows, yeah, that just shows that that was his strategic decision. And he did that because that would, you know, he would financially benefit from that, but ultimately that's what made him a target, because all these governments for whatever reason want to put their hands on whatever data he has.
Yeah, and he's notorious for like traveling around and like jumping around from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Like I read an article once where like they were saying that Telegram doesn't even like have offices and that he just switches jurisdiction so that they can't like send him legal notices. And then also like I came across Telegram pretty early because crypto for whatever reason adopted it. Like every altcoin community had a Telegram community for
Yeah.
a long, long time. And then at some point, like people that I know were like selling weed on Telegram and shit like that. So like there is like some privacy to it. Like you can make like a private, like encrypted group or something like that that I know people do. I don't know if criminals are even conscious of that to do that,
Hmm.
or if they just make a Telegram group and don't care, like and just use burner phones and stuff and change their numbers all the time. Like I don't know how it all works, but I do know that there is an unsavory element, as you said. And I don't know if you saw like the Tucker Carlson interview that Pavel Durov did like recently, like within the
Mm-mm.
last like few months. Well, he like did like his first interview in a long time with Tucker Carlson, and he was talking about how he's built a platform for like free speech, and he had to leave Russia because of persecution and this and that because of Telegram. And like he seemed sincere. Like I don't know what his motivations are, but he seemed like sincere about like wanting to proliferate free speech and human rights and
Hmm.
not deplatform people and stuff. So like the same way they're like trying to demonize Elon Musk for providing a free speech platform, like I think Telegram was like way had a way bigger impact than Twitter maybe as
I'm
far as
not
like
trying to demonize it. I'm just
yeah
saying this is what we discussed with the guys as well. Because I was like, there's a difference between, for example, using Monero and not being aware, not knowing if there's any criminal activity on chain, or knowing, witnessing a crime and not reporting it. Because once you witness a crime, you have a legal obligation to report it. And
yeah
he knew about a lot of crime. Like I even know there was crime on Telegram, right? So
yeah.
so basically it's very simple. Either make it end-to-end encrypted or comply with warrants. You can be in
I mean,
between.
I feel like he shouldn't be held responsible for what people do with the app though. Like, like if you put out like a hammer, for instance, you have a hammer company, you make hammers for construction, and then some guy like kills a person with that hammer. Like, should you be responsible? Like,
That's
it's
not a
kind of
good
like that.
example though, because say I'm watching I don't know, a child pornography video in front of you, and it's showing that a child is being abused, and you are now aware of it. Should you or should you not report it?
Well, I mean, I would for sure because I hate pedophiles, but like,
Because that's
I
what he was charged with, no, like
yeah, but I don't
sexually
think
child.
like he had any control. Like, if you make a Telegram group and then like you're doing bad stuff in that group, like he just made the app. Like he's not like actively participating in the
Yeah, but
group and
he's
like
aware of it. That's the problem there. Because if it's end-to-end encrypted, he would not know what's going on, right? So therefore, he has no legal obligation to.
would a cell phone company though be responsible because people use cell phones to sell drugs?
Well, if they,
Even though
yeah, they
they're
comply.
aware of it though.
Yeah, they are responsible and they do comply with warrants. Because if you are aware, so even if you run a VPN company, whatever, if you're aware that, for example, if you have a Bitcoin ATM or you're running a Bitcoin ATM and you see any suspicious activity, you are obligated by law to report it.
What about like YouTube though, or like Twitter? There's like groups that of like, you know, people that are like pedophiles or whatever that have like groups of like kids videos on YouTube and stuff like that. Like I've read articles about it, and you know, like
Yeah.
it's a thing. And YouTube kind of just turns a blind eye to it, right? Like they just let it happen. And I think Twitter's the same way. Like there's like a whole like pedo like subculture of Twitter of like minor attracted people and all this kind of thing. Like,
You
and
can
they kind of
turn a
just
blind eye to it, but you are responsible if you get found out, just like you can ignore it. But if you get found out, you can be held responsible because you are witnessing a crime, so you're technically complicit. And I know a lot of people will throw fits about this, but that's just the law. It is what it
mm,
is. It's always been like that. If you witness any, I mean, I just posted on Twitter right now that in San Francisco there was a Canadian tourist, and they went to Oakland, and their Tesla was taken away by the cops. And why? Because Tesla has full surveillance cameras, and his car witnessed a homicide, and they wanted to. So, so again, it's like they have the legal right to take away your car if your car witnessed a homicide.
I guess that makes sense. But like to me, like I feel like people being blamed for how people use their apps is kind of like
I agree with
a
that.
new precedent and like an overreach of law. Like,
It
you
is.
know, like because you like it's out of your control. Like you can't control how people are using your app. Like if somebody wants to like use your app for evil, they will, even if you put it out there for the most altruistic reasons.
But so correct me if I'm wrong. But wasn't his charge? His charge is not that he's not being held responsible for
It's for not
distribution.
cooperating,
It's
right?
not sharing that information. It's for not
Yeah.
reporting. That is what he's being charged for. Not that these people done bad things on the platform. That's not obviously not his responsibility. He should have just made it end-to-end encrypted. I'm not sure why he didn't. I say there's this.
That would have solved his problems, yeah. But
Exactly, like the law of the lid. Are you familiar with the concept?
no, no, explain it to me. I'm
So,
actually not.
so the law of the lid means that to the extent that you have greatness as a leader or effectiveness, that's as far as your project or company can go. So if you are not very effective as a leader or not very great, you're basically the lid of the capacity of how far the company can grow. And this was his. It's a failure of leadership, right? Because he made a very poor strategic decision to not make it end-to-end encrypted, therefore made himself liable, and the users are now unprotected because a lot of users were not using it in an encrypted way. So he cheated the users, but he also cheated himself.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. Another thing is like right now, like have you heard that like the European Union like wanted to put a backdoor in encryption, right? And then they like were overwhelmingly protested, so they stopped. And now I hear that it's making a comeback.
He made like 4 comebacks, and luckily Patrick Breyer, the MEP, the member of the parliament, they crushed that bill, the chat control, so many
No, but he
times.
was just posting like this week that they have a
Mm.
new bill and they're trying to do it again. And do you think he didn't make it and encrypted because he was trying to like have like a get out of jail free or something, like in case they did try to persecute him. Like, you know, like if they're already trying to add backdoors to like encrypted apps like WhatsApp or you know, Signal or whatever it may be,
Hmm.
do you think the reason he chose not to make it end-to-end encrypted by default was to try to like stave off that persecution? Or
I'm not sure. Like again, because I didn't like the platform, I didn't use it myself because I don't see this is a to me Telegram is like the Zcash of messaging apps, and eh, because it's not default encrypted, and I don't absolutely see no point in having these pretend solutions, right? Like either be a privacy tool that protects privacy and then you will be used by privacy nerds,
Hmm.
or just be completely unencrypted like X and then be used by everybody who doesn't care. And that makes sense to me. But to be like this weird in between, I don't think there's demand for it, is there?
Well, Telegram was popular. Allegedly, it has like a billion users or more. Like,
But was it because of the half S encryption? I don't know how
I,
else to call it because it's
I
half.
mean, like people thought it was private. Like, I
Mm,
don't know, like how many people that were doing things that needed privacy were using the privacy features or not, because like I said, like there was people like selling weed and shit on there, and they were doing it
mm,
like in just normal Telegram groups, like that were
mm,
pretty public, like tied to your phone number. I'm assuming they had like some, you know, like eSIM or something that they
mm-hmm.
bought online anonymously, or you know, like a prepaid phone or something. But like, I really don't know like the ins and outs of like how people were using it for crime. But I do know that like a lot of criminals are stupid and they don't even care about privacy.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. There's
Yeah.
statistics to prove that actually in prisons, only 0.4% of criminals have an IQ above 130, and the
Mhm.
majority, a mass majority, is below 90. So they're not particularly the most
Yeah, they're not the
intelligent.
smartest.
Yeah.
I mean, like you've heard of like, you know, cases of people on the dark web that like would send their like money straight to Coinbase to their KYC account. I mean, like I've heard like
Yeah.
tons of stories like that. So I know not a lot of them maybe are using the privacy features. Like I don't know how prevalent it was like
Yeah. I
for
mean,
that sector.
this may be controversial, but like the Tate brothers, they were using Bitcoin as a tax evasion tool. So, it's like, yeah, a lot of people are unfortunately like still under the impression that Bitcoin is private.
Yeah, that Bitcoin is private or that even Telegram is private.
Again, this is like we're such a small bubble, you don't even realize it. Like we're just like there's only a few of us who even understand like what's at stake and what's happening and what is likely to happen.
Yeah, I agree. The privacy community seems to be growing though. Like it seems like Monero is like finally becoming respected by like a much larger swath of the crypto
Hmm.
industry, especially with like these things that are happening like in relation to privacy, like a lot.
Privacy and free speech because all this
Yeah.
censorship, and that's a good segue for me to go into the Brazil situation because I'm very passionate about that. A
Okay, let's talk
lot
about
more
it.
passionate than Telegram, just because I don't like Telegram. So like you're welcome to have your own opinion, but to me, like when privacy advocates are like fighting, gun ho about it, I feel like, well, I would never use it, and I think that he should not be held responsible for other people's crimes. But again, I understand why he got arrested. So um, yeah, it's a tricky situation. We need to keep an eye on it. But as you guys know, recently, X or Twitter was banned in Brazil by. Can you pronounce his last name? I don't know. I don't want to butcher it.
It's Moraes, I think.
Moraes,
Yeah,
Alexander Moraes.
yeah, Moraes.
So he is charging 50,000 Brazilian
Reis.
real, or what is it?
I
Um,
think it's Real in Brazil
real,
or Portuguese.
So it's about close to 9,000 US dollars per day for the use of VPN to access X. And also, the Supreme Court of Brazil upheld this decision, which is even more alarming.
I saw people saying they backed off of it though. Like, do you
No,
know?
that was false. Actually,
Okay.
that was, and that was there was a community notes to clarify that they actually upheld that, which is even more disturbing. But
Isn't that guy like the Supreme Court, like justice, or like he's like the leader of the Supreme
he,
Court or something like
he kind of is, so he probably upheld his own decision.
that?
But okay,
Every
but what
picture
I
he's in that like judge like gown that I've seen
like,
him in.
yeah, I
Yeah.
upheld mine. But what I wanted to talk about is, and this is actually very important, and it's going to become even more important in the future, I feel. So there's a book that is a little over 60 years old now, written by Stanley Milgram. But the experiment that they have done, the obedience experiment, it's called obedience to authority experiment, and that is as relevant as ever before.
Was
So I
that the
wanna,
prison one or the one where they shocked people?
uh, so it was an experiment to check. Basically, Stanley Milgram, he was a Yale University psychologist, and he tried to understand why did Nazi war criminals did what they did.
Okay.
Because everyone blames Hitler. It's a very low-hanging fruit to blame Hitler, but Hitler was just one man. He would have never been able to kill 6 million Jews by himself. As
Mhm.
sick as he was alone. Like he actually was helped by the Nazis. And the Milgram experiment basically hired people, learners and teachers, and the learners were obviously um, hired actors, and the teachers were so-called volunteers who were just paid, like, I don't know, $4.50 an hour or something, and they were told that to ask questions from the students, and every time the student makes a mistake, there was a switch on a shock generator with 15 volts and 15 volts, and just to turn it up a little bit more. And the highest, the most dangerous, was 450, right? So you could turn it up to 450. And so they were instructed that to continue. And what the Milgram experiment showed is that 65% of the volunteer teachers actually went all the way to the highest, most dangerous level of shocking these students.
Which would have been a lethal amount of electricity and would have killed the person, right?
Exactly. And so what they prove is that this is called, like, the learners were basically screaming, and even though they were screaming, they were just administering electric shocks, and without any hesitation, because they were simply following orders. So they were just doing it because they didn't feel responsible. So this state is called the agentic state. So
Okay.
basically, it's when you're operating in the agentic state. In this state, you see yourself as you're just an agent. So you're just blindly executing someone else's directives without questioning the morality of your action.
Okay.
And this is actually a horrific bug in the human operating system, because you can consciously calibrate against it if you are like, okay, well, I'm always responsible for my actions, but most people aren't. And look at what just happened with this Brazil situation. Yes, Alexandre, whatever his last name, you pronounce it, he,
Moraes.
yeah, he is an authoritarian, you know, tyrant, dictator, right? But look what happened. Google complied, Apple complied, the internet providers complied. I mean, how many people are executing and enforcing? And seemingly there was no pushback, nothing. So they basically operating in this agentic state. And these are American companies. These are
Yeah.
not from China. So this
Yeah.
is the scariest part to me. It's not that
Do you think they're intimidated though? Because the Brazilian government's like going after Elon Musk's Twitter, which is a tech company, right? So these other tech companies are just going along with it because they're scared they're next, or?
But again, again, this goes back
Or
to
they're
this
just evil.
agentic state where they feel like because they following orders, they are not responsible, where they are clearly following a dictator's orders and they violating human rights, basic human rights, and they should absolutely be held responsible for the actions, but they're not because everyone is pointing fingers at Alexander.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to highlight this because we're going to start seeing this happening more and more, and people need to be aware of no dictator by himself or by herself is able to do, you know,
These
ma-
horrible things.
these horrible things. These are always these dictators are always capable of executing because people operate from this agentic state without pushback.
That makes sense. I mean, we saw that in the pandemic for sure. It's not just the companies though. It's also like the Brazilian citizens themselves. Are you familiar with Vinny Barbosa? He's like a
Mm-mm,
nano guy that's on Twitter. He's from Brazil.
no.
Anyways, like he posted something about some Brazilian lady like turned in her own uncle because he was using X with a VPN. Like she turned him into the federal police. Like
Yes.
so it's not just like, these big companies that want to be able to do business in Brazil, so they're going along with like these tyrannical dictates. It's also like a certain segment of the Brazilian population themselves like turning on each other and
Yes.
putting each other out, for using social media, which to me is just incredible. That's just crazy.
Yeah, it's like envious people, resentful people will do that. That's what happens during communism too, where your neighbors turn you in and they basically turn people into this um, proxy surveillance network
Mm.
for the state, where you can't trust anybody, and so therefore you even self-censor because now you don't know who you can trust, and you just live in fear. And again, we're going to start seeing this, and people need to be aware that like you are responsible for your action. And Google absolutely, at very least, I understand that sometimes you can't just sacrifice your company, but at very least they should have said no, let's take this to court, and they just delay the process and have some sort of pushback. But they done nothing. They were like, okay.
I can see where that's going, and that's a perfect segue into the next thing that I want to talk about, which is, have you seen that Binance confiscated all the funds from the Palestinian customers that they have, like the Palestinian traders
No.
on their platform? They not only confiscated all the funds, they did it on behalf of the IDF, which is like the Israeli military. And
Again, it's the
yeah,
same agentic state.
yeah. And then apparently a lot of the people that were on the list that Binance handed over to the Israeli military ended up getting killed, like targeted by the
Wow.
military in their genocide that's happening right now in Palestine. Like
Wow.
Ray Youssef, the CEO of No One's, the peer-to-peer exchange, was on a tweet storm like all this week about this topic, and like a lot of the people that were on that Binance list were murdered by the army in targeted attacks. So like Binance is actually complicit in murder, like mass murder.
Exactly. That this is what I'm saying, that these companies, but I guarantee you that in Binance, in their mind, they were just executing orders. Like they don't feel responsible. And
Yeah,
that's
but
the scary part.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure Google feels the same way about Brazil. Like they're not responsible; they're just following orders. But like corporations being persons operating in this agentic state, like as if they were organic people, is just wild to me.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very scary. And this is why I wanted to discuss in if you find yourself in a situation like that, which can very well be, we've seen like France, a European country that's supposed to uphold human rights, is going after Telegram. We see Brazil, we see this all over the world. So if you ever find yourself it's very important that you find a way to be undetectable, right? Because in case of Brazil as well, like if you're using a VPN, you may not want your neighbor know, you may not want anyone to know. So one good way is to use Umbrel. So Umbrel is a very well designed, easy to use home cloud server. So you can fire this up on a Raspberry Pi or basically any server that you have at home,
An old
an
laptop,
an
anything.
old laptop, anything. And on this server, what's really cool is that it's kind of like an operating system of a phone. So with a click of a button, without having to go through the whole installation process and the setup that you normally do, you can run a Bitcoin node, a Monero node. You can have your files on Nextcloud, which is a um, personal server where you can keep your documents, your phone pictures. You can have home automation with Home Assistant. You can run stream movies and TV shows with Plex. You can run a Lightning node. You can have BTC Pay server actually, and accept Monero. You can have body base, all kinds of things. And so there's messaging apps. Basically, it's a whole network of applications, just like the App Store. And no one can see this. This is all encrypted on your server. So you would better off using this, and then you can install. Hopefully, um, X will be integrated soon with it too. But like we have more and more applications now. But the best part about Umbrel is that it has a community, an open source community app store. So if you are a developer out there, an open source developer, and you're listening and you have a good idea that would help another privacy tool and a censorship resistant tool, you can actually build this privately and then launch on Umbrel, and now millions of users can privately use it. And it's truly decentralized. It's it's basically stored on your home server. This is on the desktop side, and on the mobile side, you should switch to the Google Graphene OS or Calyx OS. And that way, like for example, you can use Cake Wallet from F-Droid store. So if Cake Wallet is ever banned from Google and Apple, you have an F-Droid APK, so you can then just launch that on your Graphene OS or even on your desktop.
Yeah, F-Droid's an open source app store. And then also another one is Aurora Store, which is an open source app store that's like a front end for the Google App Store. So you can download stuff from the Google App Store without them spying on you and collecting your data and all that kind of thing. So that's super useful. Another one that's like Umbrel is Start9, which is also open source, and it's very, very similar. It's like a home server that you can add a Monero node to, or like a BTC Pay server or a Bitcoin node. And I'm sure they have like Nextcloud and things like that too. And I think on both of
Yes.
them, you can even run your own like WireGuard VPN. So like if
Yes,
you
you
were,
can.
aside from all the negativity, what do you find positive in the crypto world?
Mhm. Okay. Well, I'm very excited about the implementation of silent payments in Cake Wallet.
Okay.
I was very excited and celebratory, and probably by myself because of this F Droid. Because I kept stressing Vic about that because I was like, well, it takes two phone calls and you're off Google and
Yeah.
Apple. And so, like, we need a way to access that. I'm very excited about the integration with BTC Pay server, the Monero node in Umbrel. Yeah, so F-Droid. What else I'm excited? I mean, legislative proposals are coming out. There's more and more states that are, you know, trying to pass privacy legislation, and there's also a federal legislation in the process. So I'm excited about that. I know people think, oh, we don't need regulations, but yes, we do, because just look how beneficial GDPR is for in a lot of cases where people can actually come and sue these companies for them using their data. So Uber just got a fine, for example, on the GDPR. And I always thought, well, why does Uber need a picture of your cats or things like that? The app is just stealing all kinds of data.
Yeah.
And so now they got finally fined. So I think it's sort of changing the corporate behavior, because every time they get fined, they have to reconsider, okay, does this data worth for me to collect if I'm going to get fined in the end?
It's weird to me that like Europe has laws like GDPR, which respect like consumer privacy to a certain extent, right? And then they're actively also trying to put a backdoor in encryption. It seems like such a like schizophrenic, like bipolar attitude.
Yes, yes, and this is what I'm saying, then there's like, so when you see inside the government, the sausage factory, okay, you're gonna realize there's just a bunch of bureaucrats doing things based on private sector incentives. So it's not well thought out. It's not like they have this strategic game plan for the next 20 years and like this is step one and step two. No, it's like someone approaches a Congress member or a member of a European Parliament, and they convince her or him to propose XYZ. Maybe there's even some incentives uh, involved in the meeting, and then that person just proposes a new bill, and it's not really, it doesn't make sense. Like I kept looking at this and not being able to understand what are they trying to do.
Yeah, it's very strange. Like, does Europe have the same kind of dynamic that the US does, where they have like lobbyists that, like some industry will like pay a bunch of lobbyists to go to Washington and like make
Yeah,
political campaign contributions and stuff so that like they can get their agenda like passed. Like, does Europe have that same kind of thing going on?
yeah, of course. I mean, and these large companies are basically now an extension of the government. I mean, just look at, like, this is what upsets me. Like, look at Google. And what China is doing is absolutely unethical, at all levels. And even like these sweat camps, the Uyghur working camps, where they make all this made in China clothes, and everyone is rocking their made in China clothes in the US, in Europe. No one even feels bad about it, and it's basically modern day slave labor. um I fly drones, and DJI, I stopped buying DJI because they started building DJI drones in Uyghur camps by
Really?
the, oh yes. So it's like, although I think it's probably the best drone out there, I just like, fundamentally I'm so against, you know, using slave labor and then commercializing that and selling. And so everyone is mad at the West, but like, what about in China? What about these companies, like Apple? In the UK, like luxury companies like Burberry are basically
Apple's the
making
one
this.
that has like the suicide nets on their factories and stuff.
Exactly. It's just, it's like outrageous. Like, I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see open hardware. Like, I'm just so fed up with this Google Apple duo
Yeah,
and
I
what they
agree.
are doing. Like, we need open hardware. We need competition. It's terrible that these two companies basically decide what apps you can access and what you cannot.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Like, especially like I don't know if you remember this, but Google used to like their company motto was like do no evil or don't be evil or something like that, right? And like
Hmm.
China, like the Communist Party of China, like the government went to Google and said like build us like a censorship search engine, right? And
Yes,
then like they did that and they took don't be evil out of like their company like manifesto or charter or whatever. And then after that is like when they brought like that technology, I guess, to the United States. And that's like when Google started becoming crappy and like censoring results and stuff. It was like right after they did this project where they developed like a censorship search engine for the Chinese Communist Party.
exactly. Again, another good example of them just like operating in this agentic state and not even feeling bad about it. It's terrible. Like, these companies, honestly, we really need to invest in open hardware, because I think on a software side we are pretty good. Like, we have a sweet spot, right? Like, we have Umbrel, we have um Start 9, Graphene OS. So we have a lot of good
Linux,
software. Linux, but
BSD,
exactly. But what do we have on the hardware side? Nothing.
framework.
Yeah, framework.
Framework. They're like a computer company where like you could like
Hmm.
replace parts and stuff. There's Pine Phone, which they make like Linux phones and like tablets and stuff, but I don't think they're like ready uh, yet.
Hmm.
They're like making like ARM-based devices, but I don't think they're consumer grade yet. They're kind of hokey still.
Yeah.
And then there's System 76. Like I think I saw you post about how you had a System 76 computer.
Yes, I love my System 76. Yeah, that's a good balance between security and privacy. It's
Yeah,
so
there's
easy.
there's a few. There's a couple other brands I can't remember, but like some of them are in Europe that make Linux like hardware computers, like System 76. The guy that does the Linux experiment like always talks about one of the brands. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but we're starting to see a little bit of hardware. But you're right, we need like open hardware in a major
Yeah,
way.
and this is why I like the Home Assistant developer community. So what they started doing is they take like, I don't know, Ring cameras or like home automation devices that are basically spyware, and
Yeah,
they replace it with this beautiful open source um, software, and they turn it into like privacy tools. That's all they do. They are
that's
taking
awesome.
and of course, if Apple ever goes open source, that we will be able to do that with Apple too. But just to end it, so like with, I was looking at facial recognition and CCTV cameras of like where we at. And currently, you would think the US is really far behind China, but we're not. So right now we have in China, they have one CCTV camera for per two citizens, right? So based on their population numbers.
It's
Um,
incredible.
yeah. So for every two citizens, there's one camera. In the US, for every 6.6 citizens, we have one camera. So we're not that far behind.
And
And
then
this is,
England's more than us. Like I think England's like after China.
yeah, England has one CCTV camera for every 13.3 people. So
Oh,
that's
so we're above England then.
we're above England, and this is based on, I calculated based on the population numbers. So we have
Wow.
actually more, and Germany has 16, one camera per 16 citizens, and Japan has one camera per 25 citizens. So we are right after China. So for
That's
every six
shocking.
and 6.5 Americans, there's a CCTV camera.
Yeah, it's incredible to me how people in the United States will just gladly put spyware like into their home, like those Ring like doorbell things they got like with the cameras on them.
Hmm.
Like I there was like an article that came out not that long ago saying that like Ring decided to give all that footage to the police,
Oh, they
and like
do.
on the average street there's like I don't know how many, but like like 4 out of 5 of your neighbors have them, and the police
Yes.
are getting all that footage of your entire street. Like that's
What creeps
pretty
me
crazy.
out what creeps me out, there's this thing called flock safety, and it basically looks like a solar panel thing that is recording driver's licenses and like license plates. So you don't, it's not just accessible by the police, but you can be a homeowner or a property manager or basically any weirdo and go to their database, and I can type in your license plate, and it will give me real-time information of where your car is.
Wow.
It is super scary. And then the second thing is like they have these like ankle bracelets that are basically marketed as jewelry. So like, here's this necklace. Will record everything you say, and
Yeah,
people pay for it.
I mean your phone does that too, and then like people put like those Alexa devices in their home, like
Hmm.
that are constantly recording. Like
Yes.
it's crazy the amount of surveillance that exists in our society right now through these devices. Like, do you
Yeah.
think there's any solution to it? Because like, if you look at like the privacy nerd community, like we're a very, very small group. The amount of people that use like open source software like on their phone or on their laptop is a very, very small group. And then these devices are just everywhere and they're spying on everybody all the time. Like, do you think it's far too late for us to come out of it, or are you hopeful?
I'm hopeful, and I actually talked about this at the Fini Forum last year
Really?
because this I was thinking about what options do we have realistically, right, based on all the surveillance that's going on. And well, the first option is for you to go completely Amish and just not use any kind of technology. But the downside of that is obviously you would lose on a social context side, right? Like you would not be able to interact with society in any meaningful way other than your privacy nerds. So it would be very isolating on a psychological level.
Okay.
So that's not really a good solution unless you like want to be depressed or by yourself privately. So the second solution is to um, take use the I really love the Graphene OS model, right? Because if you think about it, they set a new standard for us. They took a Google phone, right? Because
Hmm.
Android is open source. Actually Android is a beautiful operating system. They just Google ruined it. So they took an open source phone and they turned it into a privacy device, into a privacy respecting device. And I thought, well, that's what we need to start doing. We need to create software for, we need to not shy away from like, Apple Vision Pro and all these newer devices that are actual total spywares at this point, and we need to turn them into a privacy respecting device. Now, granted, it's not we are never going to be completely private now in the future because there at some point, like right now, there's drones that can listen to your conversation. I can just fly it over your home and I can listen into your conversations. Like if people start wearing these jewelries, and the cars are monitoring us and basically just cameras everywhere, so anytime you go outside you will have to you will be recorded. And we need privacy respecting cars, we need privacy respecting devices. Like we need an actual Monero like town or something, citadel, where there's no scans. So on a long run, I think why I'm hopeful is that we really need to become more involved in pushing privacy respecting legislation, because unless these um, surveillance tools become illegal, there is really no escaping.
Yeah, I would agree. Like they've stated, like the World Economic Forum, that guy Klaus Schwab that looks like a James Bond villain, like they've stated that they want to push like an internet of bodies, right? Where everybody gets like an implantable tracking chip, like in the
Hmm.
future. And the way they're trying to do this is through wearable devices. Like they want to like break down people's resistance to it by making wearables cool, like smartwatches and
Yeah.
smartphones and Apple Vision and all this kind of thing, where you wear these devices, right? And then after they get you used to that, eventually they're going to be like, okay, well, why don't you just get the implant? It's like way more convenient. You don't have to wear it around, like this kind of thing. So they've stated this goal that they're trying to do this. So like you're right. We need to take those very same devices and turn them into like free and open source software that respects your privacy.
Yeah, and the tables will turn at some point because just look at recently Switzerland announced that all the government software will be open source now after the incident with the CrowdStrike. And I
Okay.
thought, wow, how the tables turn. Like, remember the days when like Windows used to be the simpler and easier user experience, and now everything Linux is so much better. Like, even if you're not into computers, it's just so much better as a user experience. And I think what people need to remember, and I think we should leave them with this final thought, is that as a user, you're the king or you're the queen. If I don't want to use my phone, I switch it off and it's done. Like I cannot be forced to use a device, an application, a computer if I don't want to. And so we have so much power and with our actions. And a lot of people don't use this because if you go and keep purchasing another Apple device, another this, another that, you're just keeping that surveillance company alive and profiting. But the second you start to turn away from it and say, hey, actually, I'd rather get myself a graphene OS. If there's enough people who do that, eventually the Apples and the Googles will start going, okay, wait a minute. We're not making money here. What can we change? And you can really shift and alter the behavior. Um, like, I mean, we've seen this with Bud Light, right? Like Bud Light came out with this,
Yeah.
well, what was it? The scandal? I can't remember, but
It was
they
the transvestite spokesmodel lady guy.
yeah, so they've completely ruined their whole company because now the users shifted their behavior. No, nobody like it's embarrassing to drink Bud Light, so nobody drinks it anymore. So they killed their whole company. So we can do the same thing with the privacy, um, privacy tools and devices as well.
Yeah, like I want to say like Apple has tried to pretend to be private. They
Yeah.
for some reason people think like Apple's like more private, like they pretend to be private. I don't know how true it is. There was that incident where they tried to, which is kind of ironic considering the Telegram thing that we were talking about earlier, how Pavel Durov didn't want to cooperate. Do you remember that Apple didn't want to cooperate with like an investigation to break the encryption for like some law enforcement in the US? And then they
Hmm.
hired like some, I think it was like an Israeli company that like ended up cracking the phone with like some
Hmm.
device they had. But like Apple tried to stand for privacy at one point. I don't know how sincere it is now. Like I know they do the like scanning of your pictures for CSAM and stuff like that now. So like
Hmm.
I don't know like what their privacy is now, but at one point they did try to stand for privacy, but I guess they buckled under pressure, right?
Right. I mean, just a recent demonstration with Brazil, like I'm very disappointed that neither of them even pushed back even a little bit, because like I understand, okay, maybe there's a court order, you don't want to waste money or whatever, but just say, hey, let's take this to like, do you have a legal right to actually like, because what he's doing is not even legal in Brazil, and they just simply complied. I mean, it's mind blowing. And these American companies, well, they were at some point. I think as soon as we can, we should move away from both of these companies because they don't deserve, our money. They don't deserve, like, they don't respect users. They don't respect our human rights. Yeah, it's just awful companies.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, any company that the factories have suicide nets because their slave wage
Yeah.
workers are trying to jump out of the damn building. Like that's horrible. Like we shouldn't support them in any way, shape, or form. Chill, you've been very, very generous with your time. We've been going for about an hour now. Do you want to keep going or should we call it?
No, I think we should call it, and we should encourage people to fire up an Umbrel and a Graphene OS and just get ready. And we're gonna fight. We're gonna fight through the end.
And use privacy coins instead of your
Yes,
credit card.
exactly.